On and off ramps shut down. There's a surface street tie up there with police activity. Avoid that area if at all possible. Long Beach, it's going to be a problem on the 405 North. North 405 approaching the 710. A crash onto the right shoulder in the load up from Lakewood Boulevard. Inglewood, somebody stalled out on the 405 South as you get towards Century. They're in the left lane of the collector there. And we're seeing a busy drive in Monterey Park, 10 West at New Avenue. A crash onto the right shoulder with a slow commute from Santa Anita El Monte.
Ready to take control of your phone plan? Well, then you better take that next turn to a Verizon store. Because my plan from Verizon is the kind of control we all deserve. Get exactly what you want. Only pay for what you need. Get my plan at your Verizon store today.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Get used to saying this name and hearing it a lot. Victor Wembanyama. He's a 7'4", 19-year-old phenom from France, and he'll be the number one pick in tonight's NBA draft. Wembanyama will be drafted by the San Antonio Spurs, who won the number one pick in last month's draft lottery. Wembanyama has the ball handling skills of a guard, can shoot the three and block shots. He's the most celebrated rookie to come into the NBA since LeBron was the number one pick out of high school in 2003. Draft coverage begins at 5 p.m. on ABC and ESPN. No lottery action for the Lakers or Clippers tonight. The Clippers have the 30th pick, the last pick of the first round. The Lakers have the 17th pick. This would be their first selection in the first round in 5 years. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is dedicated to empowering our communities by providing progressive talk radio for our audience. We strive to be an intersectional voice for the voiceless. As a Black-owned and operated station, we are committed to highlighting diverse perspectives and creating safe spaces for meaningful dialogue. We believe that everyone has something unique to bring to these political, economic, social, and cultural conversations, and we don't shy away from the hard conversations about current events. We endeavor to be a beacon of hope and understanding, while boldly challenging listeners to think more deeply about difficult topics that impact us all. With this in mind, our mission statement at KBLA Talk 1580 is simple: to create an inclusive platform that promotes civil discourse through honest dialogue and encourages personal growth among our listeners, so they can become the active agents of change. Our vision is to establish ourselves as the premier radio network with relevant programming across the beloved community, connecting people through shared experiences and collective power for lasting impact beyond these challenging times.
The best of Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, all 3 hours of today's program as we celebrate June, Black Music Month. Every day this month we have a different featured artist, and today we are playing some of the best of Aretha Franklin on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Tavis Smiley. Our phone number 1-800-920-1580, 1-800-920-1580. So glad to have you with us in this hour. And in this hour, I think it's true that the more you understand someone's history, the better you can see their humanity. You've heard me say more than once on this program that I don't believe that any of us comes into the fullness of our own humanity unless and until we can revel in the humanity of the other. And so it stands to reason then that the better you understand somebody else's history, the better you can see their humanity. In this hour, a conversation with Dr. Terrence Lester about his new book. It's called All God's Children: How Confronting Buried History Can Build Racial Solidarity. He is the founder and executive director of Love Beyond Walls, and I'm delighted to have him on for a conversation centered around his text that explores the sociological and cultural dynamics of unconscious bias and inattentional ignorance that contribute to the division in our society. Pleased to welcome Dr. Terrence Lester to this program. Dr. Lester, how are you today, sir?
I am doing well, Tavis. How's it going?
That's going well, man. If I complained, I'd be an ingrate. I am doing remarkably well. Somebody once said I'm in pretty good shape for the shape that I'm in. So it's been a busy week around here. We just celebrated our second anniversary earlier this week of KBLA Talk 1580. We are off and running in year 3, but a lot of festivities this week, a lot of activity this week, new shows launching this week. So it's been a busy week here at KBLA Talk 1580. But I'm okay, and I'm glad to be in dialogue with you for the hour about this fascinating subject of racial solidarity and how confronting, again, buried history can help us in that regard. Before I jump into the text itself, give me a bit about your backstory. I'm just trying to understand. I want the audience to better understand how it is that you come to this subject matter by way of your work and your witness.
Yeah. I am originally from Atlanta, Georgia. I've been here my entire life, and I found myself unhoused, actually, when I was 16 and a half years old. If you can imagine, I was going to high school while getting dressed out of the trunk of my car. And I would come in contact with many educators that would label me for my houselessness, not actually knowing that I was unhoused and sleeping in parks. And I would be put out of classrooms, and educators would not really understand why I was falling asleep. I had one educator that told me in our English class, she told me that one day you will end up in jail or somewhere unproductive in life. I held on to those words, Tavis, and when I actually overcame houselessness, I started an organization dealing with the unhoused and providing narrative justice for those who are unhoused. Along the way, I started to recognize that Black Americans or Black people actually make up 13% of the U.S. population, but we account for 50% of people who are experiencing homelessness in the U.S. And, traditionally, sociologists would posit that there are only 2 mass homelessness eras in the United States. They relegate it to the Great Depression and what happens under the Reagan administration. But I argue that houselessness or homelessness itself begins with Africans being ripped away from their land, right, and brought to the new Americas, being unhoused. It happens when indigenous folks who were native to this land were displaced, right, by colonization. And I add that era. And then along this journey, Tavis, I started to see that there was real parallels and intersections related to classism and racism. To be poor in this country, as you stated in The Rich and the Rest of Us, there's 46 million people who are living in poverty, but there are another 100 million people who are living near the poverty line. There's this criminal view of what it means to be poor. And while to be poor is to have this narrative or this social framing to say that you are other, that you're less than, that you're lazy, that you list all of the descriptions.
Yes.
I started to find that there's a parallel with how I was experiencing myself encountering whiteness in white spaces. And so anytime I would go into, white institutions to give talks, there were times I would go in and I would be the keynote speaker, and white people wouldn't really understand that I was the person, and I would be stereotyped and followed. It was one time I was invited to speak into a space about compassion in a white space. And I was asked, did I belong here? And when they were actually reading out my bio, Tavis, 2 white persons were following me to the stage until they realized I was the person who was there speaking.
For a talk about compassion.
Yeah, while I talk about compassion. And so while I was working with people who are unhoused, who are criminalized for not having anywhere to go,
right,
who are publicly sanitized, who are viewed and feared because of their houselessness. I started to see also this parallel with how I was being perceived as a black man in this country.
Yeah.
And I started to realize that there is a narrative gap and a narrative disconnect when it comes to people from the white community that really don't understand that to truly be in solidarity with your black brothers and sisters, you got to be cognitively proximate, right? Yeah.
I get it. We're going to spend the rest of this hour. I'm glad I asked that question. I'm more grateful for the answer. We're going to spend the rest of this hour trying to fill in that narrative gap. I love that phrase, that phraseology, narrative gap. We're going to fill in that narrative gap over the next 50 minutes or so. And leave it to Terrence Lester to start me off early in the conversation. My mind working all kinds of questions. And I love this framing. You know, y'all hear me say it all the time, quoting my friend Connie Rice, get your frame right. Terrence Lester said something moments ago that I had never thought about. And I as I say all the time, I love that every day when I walk out of this studio, I leave smarter than I came in. What you heard Dr. Terrence Lester say moments ago is that the original houselessness was bringing Africans to this country against their will. That's the original houselessness. You heard him reference our Native American brothers and sisters who were run off of their reservations. That is the original houselessness. Maya Angelou put it this way: we were stolen, bought, and sold into slavery, are arriving on a nightmare, praying for a dream. That's our experience. I've never quite heard the connection between a conversation in a contemporary sense about houselessness and homelessness connected to the original houselessness and homelessness that Africans and Native Americans had to endure. I'm going to link these things up. Trust and believe. You're listening to Dr. Terrence Lester on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes, I will. Pharaoh's army. I know you know that story of how they got drowned in the sea one day. Oh, yeah. Jesus said, Mary, Mary, don't weep. Don't weep. Tell your sister not to mourn.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Good thing we've got 3 hours.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
In 2020, California established the first in the nation task force to study reparations for African Americans. Their responsibility is to examine and recommend to the California State Legislature potential remedies of compensation, rehabilitation, and restitution for African Americans, with a special consideration for the descendants of persons enslaved in the United States. We encourage you to join the final meeting of the task force in Sacramento on Thursday, June 29th, starting at 9 a.m. in the first floor auditorium of the March Fong Yu Secretary of State building. To learn more about reparations and the task force, visit the California Department of Justice website at oag.ca.gov, where you can also get details about how to participate in the hearing virtually if you cannot participate in person on Thursday, June 29th for this final public hearing where the task force will present their final recommendations. For more information, reach out to Charles Communication Group at 888-326-0010. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Listen up, America. It's Ice-T. Throughout my life, I've learned a few things, like keeping your word and staying true to your friends. Loyalty is everything. That's why I got a lot of love for CarShield. Did you know when you have a plan through CarShield, your price never goes up, your coverage never goes down, no matter how many claims you have? That's loyalty. CarShield keeps their promise to customers, and that means everything to a guy like me, which is why you gotta call CarShield today. My plan through CarShield covers the cost of repairs of up to 5,000 parts of my ride. I'm talking repairs on big ticket items like transmission, engines, electronics, and computers. Not a lot of people in this world really do what they say they'll do, but CarShield is the real deal. Call my guys at CarShield today. Tell them I sent you.
Call us for your free quick quote today. 800-306-8479. That's 800-306-8479. Again, 800-306-8479.
Something new is happening in California's public schools.
They're called community schools.
One of the foundations of community schools is shared decision making,
where parents and families, students and educators make decisions as one.
Community schools lift the voices of folks that have traditionally been underserved.
Many of our classes are designed around our own students' cultures, their background, their personal experiences.
We bring culturally relevant curriculum to the classroom based on what their specific needs are.
Improving student achievement and innovative classes like cybersecurity and gardening.
And we assist families with their needs.
Some schools have parent education programs, cooking and nutrition classes.
Everything from medical or dental services to immigration law services.
This is a one-stop shop that serves the needs of not just the students, but their families as well.
They're California's community schools, reimagining public education. Paid for by the California Teachers Association.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley, recipient of the highest honor in the talk radio industry, the coveted Freedom of Speech Award at Talkers 2023. Let's get back to more of Tavis right now on KBLA Talk 1580.
Girl, I got to go. Got to go, man, really. Yeah, I'm kind of in a hurry. Here's the reason why. Talk to it. Oh, talk to it. Ooh, shabba-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Talk to it. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
And so we will. We'll jump right to it. That is The Queen of Soul. Jump to it, written by the late, great Luther Vandross. For The Queen of Soul, celebrating Aretha all 3 hours of our program today as we continue to celebrate June as Black Music Month. Hard not to have a hit when you put Luther and Aretha together. He's writing, she's performing, you end up with a hit. It's like 1 + 1 = 2. Pretty basic, pretty simple with that kind of talent together on a project. Again, we celebrate the Queen of Soul all 3 hours of today's program on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Tavis Smiley. Our phone number, 1-800-920-1580, and we are in dialogue in this hour with Dr. Terrence Lester about his new book. It's called All God's Children, How Confronting Buried History Can Build Racial Solidarity. Dr. Lester, let me get right back before we go forward. Let me go back to that brilliant comment, that brilliant framing, to be more exact, that you advanced earlier in this conversation. This notion that the original houselessness, the original homelessness, if you will, was that was experienced by Africans, our ancestors, by Native Americans. My question is, because I don't want to get too far afield, but I want to wrestle with this for just a second here. My question is, why is it important to you in the framing of a conversation in late modernity about houselessness, homelessness? Why is it important to frame that in connection to the original houselessness experienced, once again, by Africans and by Native Americans? Why is that framing so important for you?
Yeah, it's important, Tavis, because when I was doing my PhD research, I studied sociologists, political scientists, and when they talked about the subject of homelessness, it was always in this general sense, right? Mm-hmm. You have the two mass homelessness eras. You talk about the 5 periods of homelessness, whether it was, the vagrant period, the poorhouse period, the skid row period, the deinstitutionalization period, the chronic period that we see ourselves in. It was never about how Africans and Black people in this country have suffered the brunt of what the enslavement period did, right? Mm-hmm. Even when you talk about the Great Depression, we look at 1932. We are looking at the bonus army, which provided the first protest against homelessness and houselessness in the United States, which were white World War I veterans. Mm-hmm. Well, where were Black people, right? We were facing Jim Crowism as a backlash to the emancipation. We just celebrated Juneteenth, which the ratification happened in 1868. which spurred on this convict leasing, all of these things, and this Jim Crowism that was in response to our emancipation, right? And then you go into redlining, being excluded from owning land, being excluded from acquiring houses, which was federally mandated. These are public policies that excluded black people after enslavement from owning and possessing land. And today, when we see mass homelessness in what they define as the second mass homelessness era, which is the chronic period, we start over the last 50 years to start to see the criminalization of homelessness, where you can't stand in certain places. You can't sit in public places if you don't have an address. The state of Tennessee just passed a law that makes it a felony to sleep outside. And who does this hurt, Tavis? People who are black and brown, right? And then there's this criminal view using public policy to frame this narrative of who is deserving to be in community and who is undeserving. And what I'm arguing, Tavis, is that we have to connect this to a deeper history to understand that this exclusion, this marginalization, and this public sanitation has been happening to black people for centuries. Yeah.
No, it's a powerful framing, and I tell you, I the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun, and yet I find that every so often on this program, I have a different way of just seeing the world. You allow me to see this challenge through a different prism. I say all the time that at our best on this program, on this station, we're challenging folk to re-examine the assumptions they hold and helping them to expand their inventory of ideas. And I'd never actually thought about that framing. It's hard to talk about houselessness and homelessness in real time without putting it in a larger context, a broader and bigger narrative about who was first houseless and who was first homeless in this country. And sadly, the point he's making, I think you pick it up pretty clearly, is that the same folk who were unhoused then are the same folk who are unhoused now. That narrative gap needs to be filled in. And I'm glad that Dr. Lester is allowing me to see it in a way that I'd never quite processed it before. These same black folk, these same brown folk, these same red folk are the ones today at the top of the list of those who are still experiencing houselessness and homelessness. I digress. Before I go forward, let me go back one more time, one more again, as we say, to your being 16 and being unhoused yourself. Tell me quickly how that happened. At 16, how did you find yourself unhoused?
Yeah. I remember the day I ran away from home. I grew up in an environment that was, it wasn't safe for me. And so I found myself at a gas station begging for change one day. And this guy walks out of the gas station. It was a late night. And he asked me what I was doing out there so late. And I asked him, could I have some change, because I wanted to use a payphone. Cell phones weren't as accessible as they are now. He throws me 2 quarters, Tavis. One falls on the ground. The other one lands in my hand. I pick up the quarter and I call my friend named Eric. And I asked Eric on the phone if his family wouldn't mind if I came over, because I was going to be sleeping in the park again. Eric comes back to the phone. He says, come on over. My family loves you. When I arrived there, Tavis, Mr. Moore came down the driveway and he tapped me on the chest. The first time I could ever look a black man in his eyes with safety. And he told me one day that I would be a leader. He was the person that I could go to and ask, should I marry my wife? Should I put myself through college? He allowed me to borrow strength, but greater than that, he gave me an example on how to see others who emerged from social locations who can relate to what I was going through as still being worthy. And that's pretty much how I arrived here today.
Yeah. No, I love that phrase, borrow strength. It resonates with me, and I suspect many others listening, because every now and again in our lives, we do, in fact, have to borrow strength. We're not always able to do it on our own. Sometimes we borrow strength, and I love that phrase, and I resonate with it. We're talking in this hour with Dr. Lester broadly about this notion of how confronting buried history can help to build racial solidarity. Before I get to that specifically, let me just get your take, broadly speaking, on the lack of racial solidarity in the most multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic America ever.
I think it is, as one pastor said, that we're still living in the yet to be United States, and I think what we are experiencing now is a war for the minds. And when I use that phraseology, I'm talking about states like Florida, right, that has been, hijacked of history, so to speak. Libraries stripped of books that contain powerful truths from Black history, right? You have states like Texas and South Carolina and Utah and Missouri who are doing these massive book bans that contain parts of our history, which is reminiscent of these codes that were developed to keep us ignorant of this truth and repair, where we could know ourselves, but also be able to use that history, not so that we would be ignorant, but so that we would be wise to continue to press forward with truth, justice, and love. And I think that's what we are right now, and it's a shame, Tavis.
Yeah, you mentioned truth, justice, and love. Let me take those three things in order that you referenced them. What's your read on truth in our society these days, or the lack thereof? It seems to me that the truth is what each of us determines it to be.
Yeah, I think the truth has to be grounded in data, reality, and facts. And from that truth, we know what to repair, which provides that type of justice. Dr. Cornel West says, "What justice is, what love is, what justice looks like in public." I don't know if I said that phraseology right, but it's this notion that as we are telling the truth, we are also providing this type of justice and repair, where we are resistant to laws that keep people from voting. We are resistant to laws to demonize and criminalize those who are unhoused. We're resistant to environmental racism and some of the things that causes harm to people. As Reverend William Barber says, there are over 700 people that die per day, not because God has called them home, but because they're living in poverty in this country, which yet to be an issue that we really grapple with. And that justice orients us to actually show up with love and solidarity.
Yep. No, it's a powerful phrase. My friends Michael Eric Dyson and Cornel West have both used it. It comes from, actually, it's Kingian to its core, as in Dr. King, MLK. It's Kingian at its core, but it's a powerful frame, a powerful phrase, that justice is what love looks like in public. Justice is what love looks like in public. Our guest in this hour is Dr. Terrence Lester. His new book is called All God's Children: How Confronting Buried History Can Help Build Racial Solidarity. When we come forward after news, traffic, and sports, we'll get right into the text on KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to here with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Democratic African-American Congressman Kwesi Mfume of Maryland and Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland are introducing legislation aimed at protecting college athletes from heat-related deaths and illnesses. The Jordan McNair Student-Athlete Heat Fatality Prevention Act is named after the Maryland Terrapins football player who died in 2018 after collapsing from heat stroke during practice. We're learning weekly jobless claims are up, reaching their highest level since late 2021 for the week ending June 17. The Labor Department reports receiving 264,000 first-time applications for unemployment benefits. Most analysts had been expecting today's number to come in at around 260,000. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Still seeing police activity in Bell Gardens, the 710 North and South. Florence is where they had the on and off ramps shut down. There's a surface street tie-up there with police activity. Avoid that area if at all possible. Long Beach, it's going to be a problem on the 405 North. North 405 approaching the 710. A crash onto the right shoulder in the load up from Lakewood Boulevard. Inglewood, somebody stalled out on the 405 South as you get towards Century. They're in the left lane of the collector there. And we're seeing a busy drive in Monterey Park, 10 West at New Avenue. A crash onto the right shoulder with a slow commute from Santa Anita El Monte.
Ready to take control of your phone plan? Well, then you better take that next turn to a Verizon store. Because my plan from Verizon is the kind of control we all deserve. Get exactly what you want. Only pay for what you need. Get my plan at your Verizon store today.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Get used to saying this name and hearing it a lot. Victor Wembanyama. He's a 7'4", 19-year-old phenom from France, and he'll be the number one pick in tonight's NBA draft. Wembanyama will be drafted by the San Antonio Spurs, who won the number one pick in last month's draft lottery. Wembanyama has the ball handling skills of a guard, can shoot the three and block shots. He's the most celebrated rookie to come into the NBA since LeBron was the number one pick out of high school in 2003. Draft coverage begins at 5 p.m. on ABC and ESPN. No lottery action for the Lakers or Clippers tonight. The Clippers have the 30th pick, the last pick of the first round. The Lakers have the 17th pick. This will be their first selection in the first round in 5 years. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to K-Drip, where we play all the best classic water-wasting hits like Sprinklers in the Rain and Leaky Faucets. They're tunes from another time because now that we face a hotter, drier future, every drop counts. Despite an extremely wet winter, keep using less water, fixing leaks, and reusing indoor water for your garden. Visit SaveOurWater.com for more ways to conserve. Up next, brushing your teeth with the water on. K-Drip.
KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. Maisha Cairo here for KBLA Talk 1580. We're live in Los Angeles at JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. And I'm speaking to some of the attendees today to see why it was so important for them to be here.
Yeah, this is Lathan and Tyler. Main reason that's very important for me to be here is just to leave a legacy for my kids. Black wealth, generational wealth is what we need in our community, you know. Oh, Chase, someone has to take the lead. They're showing, big business like Chase cares, and they're putting their money where their mouth is at. So it's good to see, big institution like Chase, giving a lifting hand, to the community, and you got to respect that. It makes me want to bank with Chase, and give them another look. If I go to another institution, I actually see what Chase is doing for the community.
That's right, Chase is doing their part to help advance Black wealth. For more money support, tune in every day from 12 to 2 to KBLA Talk 1580's Midday Money Chain, right here.
What's up, LA? Reparations United and Black Pact got something real special going down in historic Leimert Park. Join us on July 1st, 2023. This event is sponsored by Reparations United and the Black Pact. We are fighting for justice and empowering our community. Together, we're making moves. We got an insane lineup for y'all. Soulful Regina Bell, King of LA, The Game, Smooth Eric Benet, and none other than the one and only Rotimi, and the powerful Sounds of Blackness. We also got some special guests in the house too, y'all. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, State Senator Stephen Bradford, and more. They bringing their passion and leadership to the stage. Mark your calendars, fam. July 1st, 2023. Leimert Park. Let's come together, support each other, and make a difference. Peace, love, and reparations benefit concert and unity rally. Be there or be left out. Produced for you by Tara Perry of Black Pact and Cam Howard of Reparations United.
Another exciting event hosted by Malik Books, Saturday, June 24th at 2 p.m., Westfield Culver City Mall. Next up, the newly published author Aisha Harris co-host and critic for the hit NPR podcast, Pop Culture Happy Hour. Hot off the press, wannabe reckonings with pop culture that shapes me by Aisha Harris. Join us for discussion and book signing. Moderated by Erica Kendrick, Saturday, June 24th at 2 p.m., Malik Books at Westfield Culver City Mall. Wannabe is part memoir, part critical exercise, a blend of personal experiences growing up and consuming pop culture with a thoughtful examination of issues and conundrums audiences face every day. Interracial friendships, obsessive fandom, nostalgia, and intergenerational trauma. See you at the next book signing at Malik Books. That's MalikBooks.com again. MalikBooks.com.
We knew you'd stick around. This is LA's home for progressive talk radio. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tavis Smiley. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580. Our phone number, 1-800-920-1580. Glad to have you tuned in to our program today. We're playing the best of Aretha Franklin all 3 hours today as we continue to celebrate June as Black Music Month. Our guest in this hour is Dr. Terrence Lester, author of a new book called All God's Children, How Confronting Buried History Can Build Racial Solidarity. We have built a pretty solid foundation on which now I want to build this conversation. And I want to go straightway now into the book and talk more expressly, more directly about how confronting buried history can help us build racial solidarity in this country. Dr. Lester, talk to me. Take it away, sir.
Yeah, I think to, kind of take it back to what we were talking about, I think we really have to grapple with some of the historical things that are actually still impacting society today. Mm-hmm. And mainly, I think Black people, brown people, we know this history, but I think those who want to be in solidarity with us from the white community have to grapple with what Drs. Mack suggests, this unintentional ignorance or this unintentional blindness that has kind of reemerged even stronger today to disengage with the history that has impacted Black and brown people and the history that continues to impact us today. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons I'm writing this book is because I'm arguing that we can no longer continue to turn a blind eye to the things in which have impacted our community and continues to impact our community, and we can't allow white supremacy to continue to uphold that ignorance.
It seems to me that if the goal is racial solidarity, you can't get to solidarity unless you go through empathy. And I want to just yeah, exactly. So I want to just interrogate you on that. Talk to me about how we get to solidarity if we live in a nation right now where people still lack empathy for the other. You heard me say earlier, I don't believe that we can come into the fullness of our own individual humanity unless we can revel and respect in the humanity of the other. That's another way of defining the word empathy. So how do you get to solidarity if you don't start with empathy?
Oh, we have to start with empathy. And empathy can't come unless you are proximate, right? Mm-hmm. I think one of the threats or the enemies of belonging is distance. And distance itself creates this type of ignorance. Dr. Cosby says it's both willful and woeful ignorance, right? Mm-hmm. You have the woeful ignorance where it's like, oh, I didn't know this, and it's kind of like the woe is me. But the willful ignorance comes through distance. It comes through social and political framing. It comes from being at a distance from the community that you say you want to stand in solidarity with. And I think it has to be developed. And the only way to develop empathy is to be in proximity to those that you want to be in relationship with. There's a quote that's floating around online that says, if you seek to be in solidarity, or you claim to be in solidarity with those that you want, say you're in solidarity with, but you haven't been hit by the stones that have been hurled at them, then you're not standing close enough. And that's what I'm arguing in this book, is that if you're claiming to be in solidarity, or you wanting to have empathy, and you haven't been hit by those stones, it's a sign. It's an invitation that you need to get more proximate.
But let's take that. That's a powerful quote. Let's take it and unpack it. And the simple question is this: but who wants to get hit by a stone?
I think those who understand the Kingian phraseology of a world house, of the beloved community, of people who see themselves interconnected, interrelated, and interdependent of one another. When King uses this phraseology, world house, he's saying the world is our address. That what I do for you, I'm doing also for myself. And I think there's a disconnect in that we haven't seen or had that interconnected lens to really build that type of compassion where we see the world as our address.
Yep. King talked, as you well know, also about the fact that our destiny as Americans is inextricably tied together, that our destiny is inextricably linked together. I want to interrogate that for a second. Dr. King is my hero. This audience knows that. I regard him as the greatest American this country's ever produced. I've written a book about the last year of his life, so I'm a King student. And yet, if King were here, as I often say, there are a number of things I'd interrogate him on, just want to probe him on to get more insight into his thinking. So when King says that our destiny as Americans is inextricably linked together, I think he's right about that. My question is whether or not Americans understand that. King was right about it, but I'm not so sure folk who don't have melanin in their skin understand and accept that our destiny as a nation is inextricably tied together.
I would agree with that. And I would also agree with it in relationship to the willful ignorance and the ignorance that continues to be upheld by white supremacy. I would also argue that this embedded framing is so deep in whiteness that sometimes that ignorance itself creates the wall in between the neighbors that they claim to love in church on Sunday, right? But they're not concerned with the neighborhood that the neighbor emerges from. Or even the issues that neighborhood faces. And so I think that wall needs to be deconstructed. And we can't do that work as Black people. That has to be some work that they have to do on their own terms. But the awareness piece, the cognitive proximity, which I call cognitive justice, is not just being physically close to someone. It's really wrestling with this epistemic injustice where you only want to see people, but you don't want to hear them, right? It's this notion where we're really getting proximate, and that has to come through understanding of history. Like when I was growing up in my K through 12 experience, Black history was not taught, but Black history is a part of American history, and until we turn our eyes towards that truth and really unpack that and sit with it and lament with people and be proximate with them and understand how that history is still continuing and perpetuating cycles of injustice to this day, then we can't be in solidarity. But the goal that King is arguing is that this is a hopeful goal. This is a compassionate goal, and this is a goal that we have to stay close to.
King then says, though, that change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability. It ain't just going to happen. Somebody's got to be intentional about this. I'm thinking also, as you were talking about the words of Bill Clinton, one of his famous lines, and he's right about this, I think, that racism is Black America's burden, but it's white America's problem. Racism is Black America's burden, but it's white America's problem. When we come forward with our guest, Dr. Terrence Lester, I want to talk more expressly about the notion of inattentional ignorance and what, if anything, can be done about that. And we haven't gotten to the issue of unconscious bias, which he also unpacks in his new book. It's called All God's Children, How Confronting Buried History Can Build Racial Solidarity. You're listening to Dr. Terrence Lester right now on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
I switched to Boost Mobile and got a free Samsung Galaxy A23 5G phone. Want to know the best part?
It was free?
Nope.
The fact that it's on America's largest 5G networks?
Nope. It's the ding.
Oh yeah, love the ding.
Right? It's all about the ding. It's the dingarooski, the dingarone, the ring-a-ding-ding.
Unleash your power to save with Boost. Get a free Samsung Galaxy A23 5G phone when you switch. Boost Mobile. Unleash your power.
And the ding.
Limited time offer. New customers only. Available on select networks. 5G not available everywhere. One device per line. Tax excluded. Additional restrictions apply. See your local Boost Mobile store for details.
Did you know that all City of LA renters have rights? Check out these 3 facts. Residential tenants can't be evicted without reason or just cause. Eviction protection still exists for unpaid COVID-19 rental debt due before March 31st, 2023. And you have 5 days to respond to an eviction notice. 5 days. Many Angelinos may be at risk of losing their home, and that's why we want you to know your rights. Learn more at housing.lacity.org. Be informed, be protected, be at home.
This is Tyrone celebrating the 75th anniversary of Black Radio, and June is Black Music Month. Brought to you by Procter & Gamble.
Don't you know that I heard it through the grapevine? God much longer want to be mine. Don't you know that I heard it through the grapevine?
From their first big hit in 1967, I Heard It Through the Grapevine, I Always Did Love Me Some Gladys Knight and the Pips. They were a superior singing group.
He's leaving on that midnight train to Georgia.
To the Grammy-winning single, Love Overboard.
Love overboard. My love's in need of help. Love overboard. Love overboard. I sure can't help myself. Love overboard.
Let's widen all views to the resilience, joy, beauty, and vastness of the Black experience. Learn more at pg.com/widen the screen.
Heard any other talk radio lately that sounds anything like this? We didn't think so. You're listening to Unapologetically Progressive, KBLA Talk 1580.
Our guest is Dr. Terrence Lester, author of a new book called All God's Children, How Confronting Buried History Can Build Racial Solidarity. We were talking earlier, you were talking earlier about Dr. Lester, about inattentional ignorance. What is to be done about that, if anything?
I think what we really need, Tavis, is people who really are continuing to advocate, as you said, that, you know, this isn't going to happen without any intentionality and strategy. You know, I consider myself as being a part of those in the tapestry of social justice and social change. And so while we are truth-telling, I think that those who really want to stand in solidarity with us have to bring attention to the fact that we need to honor and cherish Black history. When we talk about bias, Patricia Hill Collins says racism doesn't just magically go away, you know, just because we refuse to talk about it. You know, racial language is then replaced with these covert racial euphemisms, right? And this coded language. And so what I'm arguing is that we need to continue to speak truth, and those who are white that wants to stand in solidarity with Black folks need to understand our history, cherish our history, and center our history in a way that it doesn't become a napkin invited to a table.
I like that, a napkin invited to a table. The older I get, I confess here now, Dr. Lester, that the older I get, the more I am seeing a blurred line. This is just my own assessment. The more I'm seeing a blurred line between what many call unconscious bias and what I would call willful ignorance. That line is getting more and more blurred for me between unconscious bias and willful ignorance. That is my way of saying that I do, in fact, believe there are many fellow citizens who engage or are victimized by, if you will, unconscious bias. But
Yes.
again, I'm trying to. I'm looking harder and harder. I'm squinting. I'm squinting more and more, trying to see where that line is between unconscious bias and just willful ignorance. Your thoughts?
Yeah. If I'm honest, Tavis, I agree. There are days when I believe that those who are willfully ignorant are just the same as those who say they are good meaning but have unconscious bias. And I believe sometimes that belief that black people and brown people are less than, or welfare queens or criminal, is so deeply embedded and upheld by white supremacy in the aesthetic of this country that it does blur that line. And I think what makes us conscious, though, Tavis, as you stated earlier, is the truth. Justice is what love looks like in public. And some people have distanced themselves from that truth, and it needs to continue to knock at their door and be in their presence in a way where we can't allow history erasure to replace black dignity.
Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne. Yet that scaffold sways the future, and behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadows, keeping watch above his own. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
Did you know addiction to drugs like meth or cocaine is a disease and not a choice? But getting help is. If you have stimulant use disorder, you, your family, and friends may have a lot of questions, including where to start. Choose Change California can help. Make a change today and find a proven treatment option for you at choosechangeca.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminding you that we keep us safe. The Center for the Pacific Asian Family was founded to help address domestic violence and sexual assault in the Asian and the Pacific Islander communities. The Center for the Pacific Asian Family's mission is to build healthy and safe communities by addressing the root causes and consequences of family violence and violence against women. They are committed to meeting the specific cultural and language needs of the Asian and Pacific Islander women and their families. CPAF's vision is of an Asian and Pacific Islander community that embraces healthy relationships and works in partnership with other communities to eradicate all forms of violence. To access services, volunteer, or for more info, visit nurturingchange.org. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe everyone deserves to be safe. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Are you a small or micro business owner looking for ways to succeed after the pandemic? LA County has got you covered. Gain access to economic opportunity grants and technical assistance to help your business thrive. Whether you need mentorship or capital investment programs, they're here to help. Find out if you qualify at recovery.lacounty.gov/programs. That's recovery.lacounty.gov/programs. LA County and you, moving forward together.
Before new Cascade Platinum Plus, I would pre-rinse all my dishes because my old detergent just wouldn't get them clean. But now, I do dishes differently. A no pre-wash, no rewash, money-back guaranteed kind of different. Because Cascade Platinum Plus has double the grease-fighting power of Dawn built right in, with twice the scrubbing power, giving me a clean that lets me break all the dish rules. I just scrape, load, and I'm done. Yep, so clean. With Cascade Platinum Plus, I dare to dish differently.
conversations that matter. You're listening to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Dr. Terrence Lester on KBLA Talk 1580. His book is called All God's Children, How Confronting Buried History Can Build Racial Solidarity. A number of questions coming at me from a variety of sources, thanks to our social media platforms. Dr. Lester, I've asked this question of others, but I want to get your unique take on it. The difference in your use of the word houselessness versus homelessness. Some folk use them interchangeably. Some folk use them to mean two different things. When you invoke houselessness and homelessness, why the distinction for you, or is there a distinction?
Yeah, there is a distinction. There's a difference between home and homelessness, right? Home itself signifies, I think, what M.L. King is describing as a beloved community. It's the intangible home, a place where you feel seen, where you belong, and where you feel accepted. Homelessness, by definition, means a lack of a physical address. The reason why I reframe homelessness and I use unhoused or someone experiencing homelessness, because we can never label somebody or define them based upon an experience that they're having, right? And so while this is true, public sanitation that is happening all across the country is threatening both home, right, the ability to belong to a community, and the existence of those who are unhoused. And I think we need to reframe our language when we talk about those who are unhoused. You know, it really does my heart so much. Well, it burdens my heart, really, when I hear people just call someone a homeless person, because homelessness is an issue that you can be labeled for something that you don't have and then punished for trying to survive it, right? If I didn't have a truck, Tavis, you wouldn't call me truckless, right? If I didn't have a suit, you wouldn't call me suitless. And so we got to really think about the language that we use in describing those who are also a part of the beloved community.
Once again, you can get your frame right. Get your frame right. Powerful framing. Thank you for the answer. I got about 3 minutes left. Let me close with this. I want to go back to another issue that you raised earlier in our dialogue. And I think you're right about this, that what we are experiencing in real time is a war for the minds of everyday people, a war for the minds of fellow citizens. How do you see that war unfolding? And more to the point, how do we win that war for the minds?
In short, Tavis, I think we need to continue to speak truth to power, that we need to educate not only our community, but our children. I think the talk itself has to extend beyond just talking about law enforcement, where it has to be all encompassing. When I talk to my Black children, I'm talking to them about their Black excellence, our history that predates the enslavement period. I'm speaking to their very existence. And then we need to create segues and opportunities for Black people and people who want to know Black history to be educated outside of the school system, because the way that we are seeing things happen now, this co-opting of the word woke, which is really was a woe to mean that we need to wake up to the injustices that we see all around us, is attacking books that have our history at the center and the core of them. And we need to reclaim that in a way that we preserve our narrative, as my grandma would say.
Dr. Terrence Lester puts his money where his mouth is. In 2016, he led the March Against Poverty, where he walked from Atlanta, the SCLC headquarters, founded by Dr. King, of course, all the way to the White House. Over 800 miles he walked to bring attention to the issue of houselessness in this country. I could have spent this hour talking about the three ideals that animate and drive his work and witness. One, that anyone can make a difference. Two, that we do not live forever. And three, that it is worth dedicating that life to ensuring that no one feels invisible. We've been talking this hour about the truth, and I believe it is the telling of truth that allows the suffering to speak. And so if you speak the truth, then those who are in pain are not rendered invisible. I digress. His book is called All God's Children, How Confronting Buried History Can Build Racial Solidarity. Dr. Lester, thank you for your work, for your witness, and for this text. And today, thank you for this conversation. We love you and appreciate you, sir.
Thank you so much, Tavis.
All the best to you. Hour 3 of Tavis Smiley. After news, traffic, and sports, you're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mark Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Democratic African-American Congressman Kwesi Mfume of Maryland and Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland are introducing legislation aimed at protecting college athletes from heat-related deaths and illnesses. The Jordan McNair Student Athlete Heat Fatality Prevention Act is named after the Maryland